If I could have everybody's attention again, I know that that break was short. So we're going to go ahead and go on with the next speaker. And then we should have some extra time in the end, at which point you're free to socialize, hang out, eat pizza, and drink beer as long as you want. Well, until like a little bit after 8. So let's give it up for Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I work on Flurry Analytics here at Verizon Media. And I'm going to be talking about snapshot testing. Let's see, put this over here. Okay, so what is snapshot testing? Well, I just yanked a quote off of the Jest page. And I'll be going through more of the kind of the Jest and React stack. So that's my experience with snapshot testing. I work on a Facebook React stack, and I use Jest. So with Jest, basically they say it's a useful tool for making sure that your UI does not change unexpectedly. So in a nutshell, basically you're testing your assertion on some sort of reference snapshot that you've taken, say, on a previous test run. And then you basically, and then you have that, say, committed or maybe part of your CI pipeline, something that you can test against. Next time you run your test, you're asserting that that reference snapshot has not changed. You can also call it, as a form of regression testing. But a lot of times this is also very much integrated into say, your unit tests. So one thing about snapshot testing, I am going to go through, say, some UI examples, but this is actually not limited to just UI testing. It's useful for any output. Could be just blobs of text, various objects, maybe even maybe a post body for some sort of, say, AJAX call. Okay, so the general workflow for doing snapshot testing is you basically run your test, then you check if a snapshot already exists or not. If not, you'll tell the framework to generate a snapshot, and then it passes. Next time you run the test, the snapshot should exist, and then you'll basically do a diff. If it's the same, no changes, then great, you passed. And if there are changes and there's a delta, the test fails. Okay, let me do a quick demo. I'm going to put this microphone down. Okay. So a couple of best practices. You should treat your snapshot as code. So this is all about maintaining your tests. Don't just like blindly generate your snapshot and say, hey, it's good, right? Because it passes, right? You should make sure that what the snapshot, the output actually is testing what you want tested. And it's also a good idea to have that checked in and also integrate with your CI. So this is actually part of your cycle to keep these tests up to date. Snapshot tests do need to be deterministic. You have some sort of dynamic or generated value. Every time you take a snapshot, it's going to be different, right? And that means that every time you run this test, it's going to fail. So best to just like mock those kind of those dynamic values. Finally, you should have descriptive tests, because what happens is a lot of times these snapshots live in a separate file, right? It could be a .snap file, it could be a separate directory, right? So there's a little bit of a disconnect, a little context shift that you have to like switch between your test file and your snapshot file, right? So if you don't have descriptive, descriptions for your tests, right, you're going to be lost in these, you're not going to be able to find where your snapshot is for the thing that you just updated. So it's good to have a unique description. You can go back, and pinpoint exactly which test was actually updated. Okay. Some perks. So writing UI tests, it's faster because if you notice the back in the example, it's you just have just some of your expect statement equals 2 snapshots, right? Maintaining it's pretty quick with these test runners. You can just say hey, these are all accepted changes, update, and it will kind of regenerate all your snapshots, right? You can also interactively pick the ones that you want to accept, or maybe there's ones that are failing. You don't want to accept those for updates. You can do that as well. You can also say you want to regenerate these snapshots, right? Just go ahead and delete the snapshot files, run it again. You can generate it again. This will help improve test coverage, especially with large rendered blocks. Imagine trying to pick through all the through the API, right? Walking through a DOM, you're bound to miss something, right? You're gonna miss, oh, I didn't check the this class name exists or something like that, right? The snapshot will will basically output the whole render, and that will be what's being diffed on your next run. And also this helps with refactoring costs, right? If you're constantly just making a tweak here and there, you may have to be going through your tests over and over again. If these are fairly accepted, if these tests have changes that are just acceptable, you can quickly update them. Also, another perk is that a lot of times when you're developing your tests, right, you're looking at some sort of output that you want. Maybe you don't want to use snapshots. You just want to figure out what the output is. You'll be just console logging a bunch of stuff, right? And then that's just temporary, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to remove this once I get the test right? You can actually just use a snapshot, right? Just say, hey, 2 out snapshot. You have some output. Then it's at least in the file that you can just look at and copy your copy the output into your expect statement if you don't want to use it. Basically like a normal assertion. So it could be a useful say replacement for a console log while you're developing your tests. Okay, the perils. I think I have more slides here. So does it work for a TDD? This is basically test-driven development. Basically, this is where say you write your test first, and then once your implementation is completed, you expect your implementation eventually pass the test that you've written first. So snapshots don't exist without implementation. So it doesn't really fit that kind of model, that TDD model, right? You have to, once you've, with snapshots, you write your implementation first, take a snapshot, and then go on with your next feature. The next peril is because it's so easy to update, and to write and just say, hey, let's just create a snapshot, right? You may be taking a snapshot of the wrong code, right? If this goes back to the best practice, the first one, where you should inspect your snapshot, right? Again, this is hammering that point. Please take a look at your snapshot and make sure it is testing what you expect to be testing. So in this example here, right? So with React, you could be, so React components, maybe you're just in a shallow render. You only up to a certain point. You don't go into nested. You don't unwrap your React component, say for testing. Both of these are valid, outputs for committing to, say, outputs of your, say your renderer, eventually commit to a snapshot, right? But the first, the one on the left, there's actually something interesting to test, right? So you could be inadvertently committing your your snapshot with the output on the right, right? It might not be a useful snapshot, right? In which case, you'll find out later, like, hey, why is my snapshot always succeeding, right? I know I made some changes, right? That's probably it. That's probably the reason, right? So go back to your snapshot, see what's going on. Hey, it's not the, you didn't write a useful test. Okay. So snapshots can read like a flip book. You just look through your tests or look through your test file, and you just see everything is to match snapshot, right? It can be kind of hard to read, right? Individually, each of these assertions are hard to, it's hard to see what it is in the same file, right? So now with the inline snapshots, it's a little easier, but traditionally it was in a separate file. So it could be kind of hard to read, and the test file looks very monotonous. You also if it's on a separate file, you're actually flipping between your test file, your test spec, and your snapshot file, constantly back and forth. And finally, this snapshot testing is not your panacea of testing. It should not be just your one tool to do everything, to do all your tests. It does not replace all unit tests. There's a lot of behaviors that just is not captured in snapshots. Things like does not perform like visual regression, right? Like if you have just some CSS or some intent, there could be some. It looks right in code, doesn't render right, right? So let me kind of go through my experiences with snapshot testing. Again, so our product is for analytics. We have a developer portal where we provide a mobile SDK, and we basically give you free analytics. And if you log into our developer portal, this is where we slice and dice your data about your mobile app. Again, we are a React app. We are using a Karma Mocha Chai testing stack. This is kind of a very classic stack here. Karma's our test runner. Mocha is how we describe our tests, and Chai is our assertion library. We use Enzyme to help us do our shallow rendering for our React components, and also use some basically their ways to basically assert and walk through the assert on the UI. So Jest is from Facebook. They released Jest a while ago, kind of replacement for like the whole testing harness, right? It includes the capabilities of Karma Mocha Chai. But we weren't ready to kind of go full bore on Jest. So our stack, we're actually just using just the snapshot capabilities. So there's plugins where we can just take that aspect of it and still keep our existing tests as is. Okay, some numbers. So we have a decent sized app here. We have lines of code in JavaScript, near 200,000 lines. So it's pretty sizable. And tests take up about half of those lines. But moving down to the expect statements and the snapshots. So we have about 12,000 spec statements or assertions, and then of those, 2,000 or so are now snapshots. Now, when we generate the snapshots, it actually generates about 94,000 lines of lines to difficants. So what's the takeaway? So snapshots actually is only 16% of our tests. But the snapshot lines is actually almost as much as all our test lines of code. So we actually went back to our code and replaced basically like just boring render code, and they're just large blocks of it, right, into snapshots. And there's enough of that to actually be equivalent to almost all our tests in terms of lines of code. Just lots of those kind of renders, right? Just blocks of renders. Things like post bodies, blobs, just a lot of those kind of tests that actually really fit well with snapshots. So we're able to get a lot of coverage with that, and just kind of simplify a lot of UI code where we used to have all those walking through the DOM with say the enzyme API. So it definitely is, kind of speed up our development cycle, trying to get the tests up. But there's still 84% more assertions there. So, and that's for another talk. Okay. This is actually my last slide here. I call this innovation, but really it's like tomorrow, next week, there's going to be more frameworks or plugins or something that's going to change in the ecosystem. So some things to call out here. Snapshot testing is not just the React and for Jest. This is in general it's a concept. You can take this concept and apply it to any framework. Whether it's maybe it's Ember app or Angular app. Maybe it's a mobile app, right? Swift, or on Android. Next, I'm starting to see some libraries on GitHub where they're actually integrating, say, Jest with visual regression. It will actually say, actually create an image, right? Like, hey, this is what got rendered. It actually, say, do a diff on that. Now, visual regression has been around for a bit, right? You can also argue that maybe that came first, actually. Visual regression tools, snapshot tools, but those were usually only integrated for functional testing, right? It's like part of your CI pipeline. You spin up your web server. All right, let's hit it. Let's get a let's get some sort of rendered output, right, out of some sort of your server. Now, I'm seeing these tools integrated with Jest that it can be done, say, in your unit tests, right? Do a shallow render and actually commit some images and do the diff there. Okay, I put inline snapshots here in innovation, even though I just did a demo of it. It's not really so I put it here because before I did this stack, I didn't even know if the inline snapshot actually existed. So that was new to me. And when I started building up this demo, it's like, oh, hey, it's here, it's done. But okay. So anyways, this is here in case you want to try it out. Inline snapshots. Finally, we're saying a lot of plugins, whether you're on some Atom or Visual Studio Code, whatever IDE you're using, there's a lot of little tools that actually go around this snapshot ecosystem. Whether it's be able to kind of flip between your snapshot files quickly, or maybe just like hover over and you'll see your snapshots like inline. Maybe there's something some other signal within your tool, give you give you some give you some indication of how your snapshots are doing. We're starting to see like just this ecosystem like really build out, right? So I think they're trying to push out snapshots as something that's useful for everyone. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And let's give it up one more time for our host, Verizon Media, and for our speakers, Elias and Dan.